With me is Alf Cannan, Treasury Minister, with a big announcement for Thursday morning. It's been kept on embargo until then because it's something we're not used to in the Isle of Man. Going into the money markets, you're going off to borrow money when I thought everything was looking rosy. I mean, you've been telling us how fantastic the reserves held up during the pandemic. This is going for Steam Packet, the MUA. Okay, over to you to explain your logic behind this.
Yeah, so we've looked at this very carefully in terms of why we should actually go ahead now and go to the markets to raise this debt.
How much, by the way?
400 million pounds. Okay. But I think, first of all, the platform behind it is pretty secure. In other words, let's deal with 160 million pounds of it, first of all, which is the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company. They were always scheduled to pay back to the government the debt that we put in place as part of the purchase deal. So they were always scheduled to pay back £80 million. And they need £80 million to pay for their new ship. And again, they were always scheduled to put in some form of financing arrangement. So if they went to the market separate of government, it is likely to cost them anything up to £800,000 a year more in cost.
You get a better rate
than if it comes through the government. So that's the first chunk.
Hang on. So is this more of an accountancy procedure almost? Like it was always going to happen. It's just a question where the money's coming from.
I'll come on to some of the right. To some of the sort of broader considerations in a minute. So that's one chunk. So 160 million pounds, the Steam Packet, which is always there, and there will be a repayment schedule put in place for that. 180 million pounds is MUA debt, which is sitting with government. It's sitting on government's central balance sheet anyway. It's part of their business as usual, done with all the departments in terms of their capital expenditure. So the expenditure they incur for sewerage plans, for infrastructure plans, wiring, cabling, all comes from central government, and then they repay government. So we're effectively just refinancing that debt and putting that into the markets, and the MUA will pay government.
But let's just go back a bit. You paid off a large chunk of MU debt some years ago. You were here in the studio telling us about all that. Was that part of this thing, or is this a separate thing? More money? Because MU now is obviously taking on all the utilities.
So just before I answer that, Paul, I think it is important that I just explain, how this debt is made up. So there's 160 for the Steam Packet, which was debt that was going to be incurred anyway. 180 for the Manx Utilities Authority, debt that sits currently on the Combined Loans Fund. And effectively we are refinancing that, so it's debt that is owed. The MUA owes that to the taxpayer centrally, and finally there'll be an element of approximately 60 million that will be government extra government resources.
Right.
So that's the 400 million.
I understand. Okay.
The market interest rates remain considerably low. We do not know whether that's going to be the case in the future. The COVID cost is still coming in. We're estimating that to be 200 to 250 million pounds. Now we could pay for COVID, but there's nevertheless, you cannot escape the fact that it will have had an impact on government's cash standing. And when you look ahead also to the future challenges that are likely to be faced, and the commitments, international commitments, national commitments, particularly around climate change, particularly around healthcare, particularly around other infrastructure needs that we will need to tackle. When you balance all that up, now is the right time for us to go into the market on this basis, rather than put the island in a situation where in 12 months' time, whatever new financial plans come forward, you potentially are looking at eating into our reserves. So they remain incredibly healthy, £1.65 billion. Our full assessment of the situation is now is the time for us to do this and to secure funding with a strong platform behind it at potentially much better rates of interest.
Timing is interesting. I mean, here we are, right at the end of this Parliament. You're Treasury Minister. Who knows where you'll be in the next whatever if you get in. Why this particular moment? Why should it be done this second? I mean, have you been planning this for a long time, or is this a new plan?
Well, no. I mean, we have been looking at this now for some considerable time. Particularly, obviously, the pandemic has speeded up a thought process. I think from a broader economic perspective, one has to factor in that the markets clearly could change, and they could change fairly quickly. And so once you balance out that, you balance out the return that we're actually getting on our investments, look carefully at the need for future security to give the island the best possible chance of recovery into the future from the pandemic to tackle these challenges. That leads you to consideration to act now rather than put the government and the taxpayer in a situation where 12 months down the line, if people are considering this, the opportunity has gone.
Not good at maths, so bear with me and everything here, but surely you've got a chunk of money, these billion or plus in reserve, and you're going to borrow money. Take it from there. It's a cheaper option even still, isn't it? Taking it from your reserves, because you're not paying anything on that one. If you take the money out, of course,
Well, we're losing what has been actually pretty significant returns. So despite COVID, despite the impacts,
you had good returns.
We are still at we're actually at £1.65 billion in our reserves. So the performance of those reserves has really supported the island significantly, and more than that, we've actually, despite the drawdowns that we've had, they've broadly held in position. Where we've seen the impact is on our sort of day-to-day cash balances. But by bringing forward this plan now, we will strengthen our position to be able to draw down on reserves. And fundamentally, going to your maths question, you're getting more in return for your reserves.
Because it's making more money there sitting there doing what it does than to spend it.
Well, I think when you start analysing it, yes, on that basis, and you'll be, the conditions, as I said, in the marketplace in terms of debt, this type of debt issue, remain favourable.
Let's deal with the MU here. I mean, as I said, a chunk of money was done earlier on. Is this chunk of money going to get the debt paid off once and for all, or does the debt still roll on? This is completely separate to that for you.
So there are government bonds. We explored this actually when we first came in, and what we did was we wrote, in order to stabilise what were pretty unstable plans from the MUA at the time in terms of pricing. If you remember, go back to 2016. There was quite a lot of discourse and unrest around the sort of pricing structure. People didn't really know how prices were moving from one year to the next. To bring stability to that, we commissioned a report. We wrote off £95 million actually of the same debt that we're refinancing at the moment. But the bonds that are due for repayment in the early 2030s are still there. This will not impact on the MUAs.
You're still going to a whopping amount of money on that power station
on the business plan. No, but they will be paid off. So the plan is for the MUA to be free of that debt by 2030, and it's always going to be an ongoing process with the MUA, particularly when one is looking at what the future will hold as it adapts to the climate change agenda.
Have they come for you for more infrastructure building? They've come to you with the begging bowl to say we need more money, Mr. Cannan.
No, because they don't get any more money. This is debt that sits with central government. It has already been issued to the MUA. They've already implemented that, whether it's new sewerage facilities, whether it's new power facilities, transformers, whatever they're putting in as part of their infrastructure plan. That sits with central government. The big debt was sitting there for the actual power plant and the gas turbine.
Is it an accountancy process, or will they get more money to spend?
No, the cash comes back to. We are basically refinancing. We're capitalising our debts. We're calling in our debt, if you like, from
consolidation.
I know it's probably not the right word, but the steam packet debt will come back to us. They owe the taxpayer. They're always scheduled to repay that. And the MUA debt is currently with us, and we will put that in the markets and put the extra assets ready for us for future infrastructure investments.
Steam packet, new boat, new whatever, thing in Liverpool, that sort of thing, all going all crazy. Well, I mean, certainly Liverpool's up an interesting direction at the minute. But the public will have to pay this back to you at the end of the day, isn't it? There'll be charges on all those lovely crossings that come into you. Well, steam packet then goes straight to the Treasury.
So let's just deal with the steam packet issue. As I said, this is debt that they were already going to refinance. Clearly, COVID has impacted on the steam packet as well. We're still working with the steam packet directors to understand what their longer term plans will be as a result. But the steam packet is a profitable business. We know that it will be a very profitable business moving forward. The point about the government doing that, rather than the steam packet themselves, is that it will save. We will be able to get a better rate, and it will save the steam packet as much as £800,000 a year as it's part of this sovereign issue.
Were you concerned with the new chairman, Lars's thing about the new boat being not what he wanted, or the Liverpool landing stage isn't up to what it needs to be, and all that? You are the shareholder. So were you concerned with what's going on there then? That maybe it isn't the right ship, or maybe it's not the right thing in Liverpool. Maybe something needs to be done to stop this before it goes too far.
Well, I think first of all, I have every confidence in the board. They've done an amazing job in terms of getting the new build underway. I understand that's progressing incredibly well, and I think there clearly has been perhaps a misinterpretation or a misunderstanding in terms of communication between the DOI and the steam packet.
It was quite a cutting response, was it not, to DOI Tim Baker, was it not? You saw the letter.
I think the board is an independent board in terms of whilst they do obviously
you own it.
report to the shareholder.
You are the shareholder.
But the board absolutely. But we're not micromanaging the board. The chairman, has made the steam packet's position clear on a number of occasions during the pandemic, as he is entitled to. We're not going to silence people that we are bringing in to run these organisations for us.
You
and
have
I'm very
every
happy
confidence in the board, but you also have every confidence in the new ship and the Liverpool landing stage.
I have absolutely every confidence that the new ship and the board will be
deliverable.
Stage? The Liverpool landing stage, has had difficulties. I think
that's playing it down a bit, isn't it? I mean, the price has gone bananas.
As the infrastructure minister has made clear, there has been an impact, as there will be across many construction sites, particularly in the UK, in terms of post-COVID. Are you happy with the
Liverpool landing stage?
The Liverpool landing stage is progressing as planned, except that it has been delayed,
and also
there is cost. There is additional cost.
Where's that coming from? Is this all part of this number money?
No.
Is that another thing, another pot altogether? That's DOI pot, is it?
No. This. I don't think you should confuse what we're doing here.
People hear money going out. Come on, I don't understand it, but other people don't understand it. So that DOI is a separate account for Liverpool landing stage. The boat is one other thing, and this loan is for that.
I think if you try and sort of mix up other areas of government into this, you're not necessarily going to lose focus.